Okay, so Bellular News, which I always feel like I'm mispronouncing whenever I say it. Bellular News has a video breaking down some of the leaks and some of the discussion over Bungie. Because if you're not familiar, there's a whole lot of drama around Bungie right now. Hello. It's not great. Not only are they embroiled in scandal after scandal with Marathon, but also there's been lawsuits from former head honchos at the studio who claim that they were fired for fraudulent reasons, that they were just fired so they wouldn't have to pay them out stock options and things that they wanted to claim. The CEO of the company just left out of seemingly nowhere after not being that popular in the company. I mean, there were even stories that went viral over him spending, right after mass layoffs at Bungie, people found his account on this website called Bring a Trailer, where you can buy classic cars at auction. And they found him spending millions of dollars on all of these classic cars. And after it was revealed, bear in mind, this is, like you notice he stopped using this account in June of 2024. That's because in June of 2024, it was revealed that this was his account. And so he seemingly got a different account that's anonymous. And so I'm sure he still kept buying these classic cars for millions of dollars. He just stopped doing it publicly because people were calling him out, being like, you're firing dozens of your employees, hundreds of your employees, and you're still going and buying whatever the hell this is. Like, what are we doing, dude? You know, I'm a capitalist at the end of the day. You know, I get it. You should be allowed to spend your money on whatever you want, but I get to make fun of you for it. I bought myself like all of these stupid things like candles. I have an addiction to candles. I think that's beautiful that I'm allowed to spend my money that way, but you guys get to make fun of me for it. Dems to rules, okay? You're like, hey, Luke, go buy something interesting instead of something where you're literally burning your money. That's fair. You get to make fun of me for that. That's how this works. Epic Magic Pants, thank you for the membership, by the way. But the point is, the CEO, not that popular. His own employees kind of hated him for all of this and for running Bungie into the ground, seemingly. And he's just left. And it's been a question. Was he welcome to leave? Was he fired? Was he just retiring coincidentally at the exact time that all of this fell apart? Well, it seems like we actually might have an answer now. Let's see what Bellular News has to say about it. As always, you should definitely hit the like button on his video. Give him a sub as well, because they do fantastic work over there. And let's see what they have to say. Finlay, thank you for the membership, by the way.
I've missed this news, but basically it has been a long few months over at Bungie. I mean, just think about it. We've seen the Marathon delay, the plagiarism allegations, and now, well, one of the lowest concurrent peaks for a Destiny expansion ever. And sadly for them, the mood is not improving whatsoever. Look at the subreddit and you will find a community that's all but given up. The reason why? Well, because they feel like the devs have given up too. But it might not be the resignation of developers. It might not be the community giving up. No, I think the most telling thing about Bungie's state is that the CEO resigned. Let's begin by looking at some numbers, and I know Steam player counts aren't everything, but they are something, and they don't.
I will say, it is crazy to think where this year started for them and where it ended. At the start of the year, they thought they were about to launch Marathon, which was going to be, again, I've said it before, their goal and their thought was that Marathon was going to be the replacement, basically, for Destiny. That Destiny was on its way out, the numbers were dropping slowly, and that Marathon would come in and basically become the new Destiny. And I know this sounds crazy now, but again, the goal was for Marathon to do for Bungie what Destiny did for Bungie, where they came in and they were the first ones on the console side to do a AAA kind of looter shooter MMO. They wanted to be the first ones to do a AAA console-based extraction shooter that they thought would be the next big thing, that they thought would set them up for the next decade. And we kind of know how this has gone for them. It's not really worked out that way, but that's where they started the year. And at this point, I mean, look at it. The CEO's gone. There's like company morale is in the toilet, and the game Marathon is embroiled in all sorts of controversy. Destiny is falling off way faster. You guys were telling me just before we did this segment that there's a number of big Destiny streamers that have also like walked away from the game and are moving towards other games, which is crazy as well. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Finlay, thank you for the membership. I don't know if I already said that. I might have already said that. I don't know. It's a blur. I'm hungry. Continuing.
don't look good for Edge of Fate, which is the latest Destiny expansion. Now, part of that was the final shape giving people an off-ramp, right? The final shape is basically the big culmination of a plotline, so if you're gonna duck out of the game, well, after that really is the best time. I mean, player sentiment was already low, and the state of Bungie, and of course the Marathon debacles, did not help. But here's another problem. Only 22% of critics recommend the new expansion, which is absolutely brutal. And when it did release, well, players found that the new portal system completely reworked the game. And let's just say it was controversial. So Bungie basically added a parallel power system, and as Paul Tassi frames it, this effectively sunsets 80% of the game. There was no point in engaging with anything outside of that system now. And that's because bonuses stack in a way that makes everything else almost irrelevant. Seeing the feedback, Bungie tried to fix complaints, but the fixes would have slowed progression even more, so they had to walk those back. And then, well, they had to come up with something else entirely. And all of this got worse, of course, after the QA layoffs of this summer. So the stuff in-game's been going bad, but I'd say, given the QA layoffs, it's hardly a surprise that in addition to all of that, there is a never-ending tide of bugs, errors, exploits, all that stuff. And for a peek at what's happening, well, look at this. Raid leaderboards that are full of cheaters. There's paid armor that...
Did you see that?
Raid leaderboards that are full of cheaters.
That's crazy, dude. They have the breakdown of players. So, list of the desert perpetual cheaters. Disclaimer, these placements were at the time the leaderboard is being updated. Let's see. Obvious signs, sub 10-minute clears, duality alliance for limiting many of the same people in many raids, unlimited heavy kills, fresh accounts, fewer than 5 total clears on their account. And this person with 315 kills, 4 deaths, 2 assists, a KD ratio of 78.75. One of these things is not like the other. Where do you think they turned on the cheats? Can you tell? Can you tell when they turned it on?
There's paid armor that turns players invisible. There's rewards not being granted, soft locks in multiple places in the game, and people losing access to paid content and stores, and the list of things goes on. And then came even more frustration because Bungie also seemed to remove aspirational loot from the reward pool. They seemingly made it paid instead. So that was a shit show. Of course, it's one they had to fix as well after a bunch of backlash. And, I mean, we haven't even talked about the Star Wars-themed expansion controversy in this video. So in short, right? It's been a bad time, and the man in charge during the development of all of this just quit. But it's more than just that he quit. It's some of the context and also some of the incentives. Bungie CEO...
Well, it's really, really tough for a game based on playing with friends when that becomes uncool or cringe. Like, peer pressure is a powerful thing in the games industry, both helping a game and hurting a game. Like, when your game is cool and it's popping off, like Helldivers when it launched, everybody's hopping on, everybody wants to play it because it's the thing. Everybody's hopping on together. But when a game becomes uncool, you end up with like a Concord, where it's like nobody wants to invest in that universe or in that platform. Nobody wants to do that because none of their friends will want to either. So it's added baggage and it's sort of like an albatross around each and every player's neck when they're trying to get into the game. And in the case of Destiny, it seems like it's steadily becoming worse and worse. And me, as somebody that's not actively playing Destiny, I've tried it on numerous occasions, but as somebody that's like not deep in the community or anything, for me, I feel like every time I hear something about Destiny, it's something worse. The one exception to that being the final shape, which obviously did quite well. But beyond that, it feels like every time I hear anything about Destiny 2, it's bad news.
Is gone. Pete Parsons gets to walk away from all of this chaos. Someone else can deal with the consequences of the company's actions during his tenure. In a blog post at the end of August, Parsons announced this departure. He had 20 years at Bungie, and he said that he decided to pass the torch. But the timing is kind of interesting. You see, he's leaving 3 years and 1 month after Bungie's acquisition by PlayStation, and that may just align with stock options maturing from that sale. And that's something clearly in the minds of the staff whom he fired. Yeah, to be clear,
just in case you're not familiar with how these things typically work, typically when a company is bought out by another company, there's of course payouts to the company itself, like if to the shareholders, people who own the stocks or the shares of the company that's being bought. But for executive leadership, there's usually also incentives. It's why I think like Todd probably got a massive payout after the ZeniMax deal, similar to a lot of other people in the company as well, to be fair. But in this case, like if PlayStation buys the studio right here, and this is when it's announced that they're spending $3.7 billion on Bungie. Typically what they'll do is they want the leadership that in their eyes have made the company successful to this point. They want them to stay. So what they do is they don't want you to quit the moment that this deal clears, because then the company they bought is not the same company anymore. So what they do is they set up like certain timelined incentives to get people to stay and to get them to work hard and continue delivering. So after like 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years, there's going to be different benefits. Maybe it's here you can you get a stock option reward worth like 1 million. This year you get a $5 million stock option package, and then here you get $10 million worth of stock options that you can redeem at that point. And then at this point, this is your final payout, and you can leave after 3 years, because after 3 years you should have built up the company and prepared a like successor and all of that. It seems like all this time passed, and the moment he hit this point, he got the stock options and ran. And the way the stock options work is typically it's like you're allowed to buy 1 million shares at whatever it is, $25 a share or something. But currently the stock market is trading those shares for maybe $100. Forgot a one. $100. So effectively the gap between these is 75, and that's just pure profit to you. That's where the value of it comes in. So you have to pay 25 for the share, but you can turn around immediately and sell it for 100 if you want. Typically, that's not what executives will do. They'll go to a bank. The bank will lend them the money for the $25 a share to buy 1 million of them, because they probably don't have 25 million in cash. But the company that's lending them the money to buy those shares for $25 a piece, they are valuing it as an asset at $100 a share, because that's what it's worth. So they'll give them basically a loan where maybe they pay them out 75 million, and then they hold those million shares as collateral. Or they'll give them the 100 million and then they hold the shares as collateral, even though they don't sell them at that moment, because that would have tax implications and all of that. Really fancy way of just saying there's a convoluted way that this works, but in like effect, it's worth, you know, a huge chunk of change, right? And it seems like this very conveniently happened right after a big calendar anniversary after the purchase of the deal goes, or purchase of the company goes through. And so that's why you're doing it. And they don't pay income tax. Well, yeah, you don't pay income tax on loans. It's why if you refinance your house and you take 100 grand out or whatever, you don't pay tax on that. So if you have assets and then you take loans out against your assets, you don't pay tax on it. It's why you can have, you know, a billionaire that has $1 billion of Amazon stock or something, who basically doesn't pay any tax because he's just taking loans out against things that he owns. It's why, like, if you want real money, you don't earn it, you borrow against it, if that makes sense. It's the whole thing.
Acted with barely disguised venom on social media. Say ex-social media manager Griffin Bennett had a particularly sharp response. He just said, vested stock cleared, damage done, but hey, we're all a family, right, Pete? You see...
Yeah. Dude, it drives me crazy when an executive leaves like this and everybody knows what he's doing. It's like, I ran the company into the ground and everyone hates me and the company's failing, but I got my stock options, bye. Everybody knows that's what's happening. But every damn time that they do this, they're like, we've built a company that I'm proud of, and we've come together and established a legacy for our customers that they will talk about for years and years to come. So get out of here, dude. Get out of here. Like, shut up. Nobody cares. Yeah.
Back in December 2023, insiders were worrying about something. They essentially thought the leadership at Bungie were preparing to cut and run after the launch of Marathon.
Yeah.
Obviously, the launch of Marathon did not happen when anyone thought it would, especially at the time of those leaks. And what it looks like is that even if that was the plan, while Marathon may have been delayed, Parsons' exit was certainly not delayed in line with the game. So to understand this, let's go back to 2021. Staff framed Parsons as slow to act on toxic work culture allegations. They sent direct letters to him, and his intentions were supposedly good, better than some others of Bungie leadership, but ultimately, he didn't really react fast enough.
I genuinely don't remember if I met him or not. I genuinely don't remember. When I was out at the studio in, what was that, early May, I think? Maybe April. I know executives at the studio were there. I don't remember if I met him, though. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Didn't make much of an impact.
But this was just the start. What followed next? Well, the multi-project incubation period that sapped resources, the sale to PlayStation, disastrous monetization demands being placed on the Destiny team. All of this stuff harms developer and player sentiment, and I think most dangerously, it put players and developers against each other. And when that sort of thing starts to happen, game communities can just enter a death spiral. But then came the endless stream of layoffs both before and following the final shape. Because hey, congratulations, you did the final shape, people seem to have loved it, and your reward is already planned layoffs. Epic.
Yep.
Now add to this the woes of this summer, and just before that, the entire marathon saga that played out. It's a lot. Now, look, to be clear, Parsons isn't directly responsible for everything that went bad. He's not the guy individually, unilaterally making choices about systems or skin implementation, right? Maybe he'll be a tiebreaker between some of his leads, something like that.
Well, as the leader, like at some point, it lands on your desk, like you're still responsible. Like if he wanted to step in and be like, no, we're not doing any of this. He has the power to unilaterally demand that, and then they stop it. He could do that. Obviously, he didn't, because it happened. So what seems to have happened is that there were probably certain demands and expectations as time went by. So, for example, over the course of this timeline that we kind of broke down here, very expertly, and visually stimulatingly, there were certain like demands and expectations put on the team where they needed to hit certain goals at 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, and they needed to maintain certain revenue targets. So for example, if the revenue target was like, you need to grow at 5% per year as this time goes on, and the revenue for Bungie in general is maybe up like this and occasionally dips below, but the trend line should be roughly in line with that, right? What seems pretty clear as was happening was that they were missing those targets significantly. There was a story like a year and a half, 2 years ago, that Bungie was missing revenue targets by as much as 50% at certain points, which means that their trend line was not like this. They were down like here. So I think what happened was they started desperately trying to boost those numbers so the executives could keep their stock options, because if they didn't hit targets, they wouldn't get to vest these options the same way, or as profitably. So they just started to try and, squeeze blood from a stone. They started really pushing the monetization as far as they possibly could, literally knowing that it's going to drive the company and the game into a pit. But they didn't care, because they knew, we just have to make it to 3 years and then I'm out. And that's where this all goes bad. And it's why, the Bungie deal, I still insist, will go down in history as one of the biggest blunders in all of gaming history. It was not worth 3.7 billion. And the way that they structured it was like masterfully done to lead to this exact result. It really is crazy.
But he exemplified the company culture. His decisions led to layoffs. Those layoffs left teams struggling. We know, as an example, struggling to run QA. So if you're a player finding, wow, there's a lot of bugs, what's going on here? Maybe that would have something to do with it. And with all that bad news, it's no wonder that Bungie couldn't retain experience. So, at worst, he is indirectly responsible for the company's state, but obviously, as CEO, yeah, he was responsible. But here's something. If Parsons is indirectly responsible for the company's state, what's curious is that his successor will not have the same role. Bungie's new leader is a man called Justin Truman, and you might remember him from some of our previous coverage. We talked about his infamous GDC presentation on sustainable live service development. You might remember a quote, which is, "Beware of over-delivery." Obviously, Destiny players felt that they had been under-delivered to for quite a while, so it obviously fired away as...
What an insane thing to say. Beware of over-delivering. It's crazy. It's funny because it reminds me of almost an exact same sentiment that was echoed from internal documents that leaked out of Apple. I don't know if you guys saw those, but there was a report that came out with leaked documents and emails from Apple's executive suite. And we've all had like a thought for a long time that Apple was intentionally delivering phones and creating products that were like not as good as the Android competition in terms of features, because that would be expensive. And so they kept the feature set lower so that they could increase margins and profits. And literally they have emails that leaked exactly like that, which said like word for word, it was like, yeah, the person emailing, I think, was from the supply chain side or the finance side. And they were like, yeah, just if only tech bros are going to care about a feature, don't put it in the phone. It's like, bro, you're intentionally being like, yeah, we're not going to make the best phone we can because that's going to be expensive. So don't even bother with it. It's crazy. It's crazy. And, you know, it was echoed across the board. There was the AI team that worked on Siri and put it in an order that was approved by Tim Cook, the CEO of the company. And they put it in order for like $50 billion or something of AI chips they needed for Siri work they were doing. And the finance team within Apple shut it down and like, no, just figure out how to use the stuff you already have. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. That's too expensive. Don't do that. Don't over deliver. You know, it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. And that's the same thing that he's saying here. He's like, don't over deliver. Give customers just enough, not too much. Because if you give too much, your profitability drops and that doesn't work. It's this mindset that kills companies. And that's the guy that they just put in charge of Bungie after Pete left, who wasn't doing a great job to begin with. You know, it's not like, oh, they were doing phenomenally well, let's put somebody worse in place. No, dude, they were already struggling. They put a guy in that seems like the most corporate hack ever. It's crazy.
As a meme, it became kind of typical, an example of everything that people thought was wrong and going bad with Bungie. In reality, what he said in the talk was far more nuanced, and I guess the easiest way, albeit crude, is to just say, he was basically saying, don't blow your load. That's kind of it. Now, he actually...
Let me see. Oops, I accidentally dropped the volume. Oh God, isn't this the beware of over delivery guy? I mean, it is a soundbite. Soundbites go viral because it's a quick little tidbit that gives you a piece of or a nugget of truth that is very interesting or revealing. Leanna replied to it and said, watch the full talk. The internet massively took that out of context. It's a complicated convo that had very small part of it clipped out of context. That talk was actually very good. I thought it was a very interesting talk. I watched it. Maybe you guys know, did we watch it on stream or did I watch that in the shower? I watched GDC talks in the shower. Not really watch, I listened to them. But did we watch it on the stream? I don't remember if we did it on a stream or if I did it privately. But it is a genuinely interesting discussion. But like I think it's fair to mention him as like the beware of over delivery guy. Like I think that's probably fair. I don't think so. Maybe we watch that sometime. We could do that. That could be funny. It is an interesting talk, genuinely, because if you want to know how live service stuff works and how these games get built and the sort of economics of it, it is genuinely interesting. But it is like, I think it's fair to say, yeah, he's saying don't like do too much because then profitability drops, you know, which is true.
It was based,
but it's also perfectly representative of the problems with Destiny right now, which is that people feel like they are being so reserved with what they do to maintain profitability or to lower costs that the product is suffering significantly.
Basically saying, don't blow your load. That's kind of it. Now, he actually engaged with the criticism of that meme when it came to accepting his new role. And what's interesting is that ex-staff weren't actively hostile to his appointment, which I think does suggest it could be a step up at least. But here's the thing. He is replacing Pete Parsons, but his new role is not that of Chief Executive Officer. He instead will be Bungie's studio head. Now, this may seem like some semantics, but I think it represents the most fundamental shift at Bungie in years. The reason why is simple. It suggests that Bungie's independence is ending under PlayStation. Yeah. That's a threat that's loomed over them for a long-ass time. It's obvious that now it's coming true. And even before Parsons announced his departure, PlayStation were closing in, and they weren't doing it sneakily. Sony CFO Lin Tao explained this to investors in early August, where he said, quote, "We have gone through structural reform as we announced last year." And then he added the crucial bit of information, quote, "This independence is getting lighter, and Bungie is shifting into a role which is becoming more part of PlayStation Studios."
I know people have made a big deal of this. I find it so baffling that people are surprised by it. Like, they were missing revenue targets by 50%. That's crazy. I mean, literally, it's like if I bought a widget for $80. I'm like, okay, sell this for $100 for me. Go. We spent $80 on it. You're going to sell it for $100, 20% or $20 profit. That's great. And then you come back to me like, I sold it for $50. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Now, that doesn't work. You don't get to do that. Like, then you would have a tough job, trying to justify why you should keep your job to me if you're consistently doing that for years at a time. After I bought out your company for $3.7 billion, So I don't find this shocking at all. I mean, I'm like, yeah, clearly the leadership is, in the pure sense of the word, people throw around the term incompetent a lot, but they are not competent in the sense that they are not seemingly capable of delivering on the basic goals and financial goals of the company that have been set out before them. Like, it's pretty straightforward. They can't do it, so they shouldn't be treated as if they are. Like, if you can't do what you said you could do, then you lose your job. Like, it's not that crazy.
Yeah, so integration is proceeding. The independence of Bungie is going away. And obviously, this followed the 2024 restructuring, where PlayStation moved 12% of Bungie, which is 155 roles, directly into SIE, which is...
Yeah, they restructured a ton of it. Let's see, unrealistic goals. Well, that's a part of it, but that's also why the $3.7 billion price tag never made any sense at all. Because if they were valued at 3.7 billion, pretty clearly based on projections and revenue projections that Bungie did for them, saying, hey, Destiny's going to make this much, Marathon will make this much. This is why we're valued at this point, at this level. And Sony seemingly agreed with that valuation for some reason, because Jim Ryan had a passion for overspending, quite clearly. And so as a result, they set up all of these financial targets and stuff that were not possible and were not viable. And now we see the results of it, and they're struggling to hit those targets, which they never were going to hit, seemingly, because they were kind of framed in a way that boosted the value and the purchase price of Bungie, but that led to grossly unrealistic expectations for what they could actually deliver. And I mean, it's why you really need to do your homework before you buy a company for $3.7 billion. It's just crazy.
Sony Interactive Entertainment. Those people then formed Team LFG, and they're currently working on a live service MOBA, which is one of the things that came out of Bungie's incubation period. Anyway, they also formed the Creative Studios team supporting live service development, which obviously makes a lot of sense when you know that PlayStation really wanted those live services. Now, before that, well, Sony's incoming CEO visited Bungie, and when he did, he praised the staff, but he said there was, quote, room for improvement. Not necessarily on the staff. No, his room for improvement was specifically regarding business expenses and accountability for development timelines.
Yeah, Hiroki Totoki, he is the head honcho now at Sony. I'm pretty sure he's the guy that got Jim Ryan to leave, and he's hardcore. He's really, really hardcore. And in his own words, he was asked in an interview, it's my fun little Hiroki Totoki anecdote. He was asked, what is like your thing? What's your focus when you are looking at the finances of any company and your operating expenses, all that? What's the thing that you are all about? And he says, margins. Margins. You know how you increase margins? You either increase the money you're bringing in, which is easier said than done, or you cut the fat. You cut the bloat. You cut the dead weight. And that seems to be what he's looking to do all over the place, which is why he came in, looked at PlayStation. PlayStation, as a subdivision of Sony, was at 6% margin. And at this point in the generation, when they were having this conversation, that margin was supposed to be double that, or even triple that. It's at 12 or 20%. For every dollar you make, you should be pocketing 20 cents. They were only pocketing 6 cents on the dollar. Horribly mismanaged. You're off by half or like a third. Like, what are you doing? And so he came in, he cleaned house, booted a bunch of the executive suite out, and Jim Ryan happened to retire right around that time. But sure, it was a coincidence. He just retired. I think he was welcomed to leave, frankly. And he came in and he looked at Bungie and was like, yeah, you guys should be doing a lot more in a lot shorter time, and you shouldn't be this wasteful. Like, we should figure this out.
Certainly sounds like a bit of a threat. And those are the types of failures that staff are not responsible for. They're the sorts of things management is responsible for. And now Bungie has no CEO. The leadership will report directly to PlayStation. And it's a PlayStation that's different. One that is shifted towards cheaper, faster game development with more central oversight. Because they essentially realized, oh dear, we put a lot of chips into Concord, and we really didn't monitor the quality of that, did we? So you might be wondering, is this better for Bungie? It's weird, right? Because we don't know. You don't know. None of us know. Because, like, the future hasn't happened yet. And also, game development has a lot of lag time. Parsons left at the end of August, but we're still going to feel the impact of his leadership, I suppose his and his team's plans, for a long time. Now, if we're to assume that Truman has the best of intentions, which I am happy to do, well, it's also the case that he's likely under a hell of a lot of pressure because he now needs to deliver change for both Destiny and Marathon, both of which are extremely embattled. And he's working with a studio that is now bled of its senior talent via multiple rounds of layoffs, and also dealing with fans that are rightly not happy and rightly not trusting. Meanwhile, production patterns and product offerings keep on changing. Look at the different iterations of, like, seasonal yearly content that Destiny has had. Look at how Marathon is being forced to change by a market that, well, is, I think, quite literally demanding change of it. Though, of course, none of this will be news to Truman, because he's been the Chief Development Officer since 2022. Before that, he was Destiny's General Manager, and he switched roles right as the chaos began with the Lightfall expansion. He's been part of the decision-making since then, and he still is now. So the question is simple. Do he and PlayStation actually have a plan? At the very least, PlayStation can be pleased about something, and that's licensed revenue from Destiny Rising. What's Destiny Rising? Well, it's a mobile game with gacha elements, so yeah, it's bringing in the money. And as we've covered, that's where a lot of the industry's money comes from now. And by most accounts, NetEase used their blank slate with making this Destiny spin-off game actually quite well. They supposedly made a passable Destiny campaign. Players were satisfied enough until, of course, they hit the end game and the gacha and power and all of that began to rear its head. But still, it brought in some happy numbers. PlayStation will like that. And PlayStation now treats Marathon as their investor marketing centerpiece. We see that from recent accounts of them saying that things have improved with the game, talking about features added like proximity chat, that the mission system rewards players better, that the UI and UX has got significant improvements, that they've, of course, removed the plagiarized art. All of those things to rehab its image and, again, tell the investor story that they need to tell. But there is a simple enough fact. Marathon will arrive late to the extraction shooter party. You see, both Escape from Tarkov and Arc Raiders will hit their own version 1.0s first. But when Marathon arrives, it may have a shot of success. Bungie can still deliver cool things from time to time, undoubtedly. But the problem, Bungie will deliver Marathon under, to be charitable, let's just call them unenviable conditions, just like they have with Destiny. And when you look at Destiny right now, you do see that it ain't working. The future of Bungie then? Well, in theory, more PlayStation engagement.
Yeah, I mean, they're not in a great spot. I think that there's little possibility or little chance that Bungie is like shut down. I don't see that happening. It's pretty clear PlayStation values their expertise pretty highly. So I don't think they're going to like, okay, we're shutting down Bungie, moving on. I don't think that happens. I think that they'll keep them open, even if it becomes like as a support studio or stuff, they'll keep them open. But I think that they know that they have a lot of talent there, which they clearly do. It seems like most of Bungie's issues have come from the management side. I just choked on my own throat. From the management side and from other more broad, like, directorial choices. But absolutely, like, PlayStation is changing their approach a lot. And I think for potentially the better. Like, there's been discussions of, like, the stuff with Fair Game $, where the founder of the studio left shortly after a leaked or rumored well, it was reported on, so I guess reported on playtest, which evidently didn't go that well. And it's like, okay, so they had a playtest and they're making choices and changing things based on a playtest. That apparently didn't happen for Concord at all. Like, they just put it out. So they're changing how they handle things at the very least and trying to avoid Concord level disasters by getting feedback early and often and making changes based on that feedback, which is ultimately all we've been asking for. If you're going to do the live service thing, at least ask for feedback and then make changes based on the feedback to deliver on what you're trying to do. So I think they're making the right steps, but it still is an uphill battle because live service is not easy.
It means more oversight. So if you miss your development targets, yeah, you're not reporting to Pete Parsons who can spin it to Sony. No, you're going to be answering to PlayStation directly. The same goes for missed revenue targets. And if that leads to more layoffs with the same delivery expectations, then Bungie will just have to face the worst of all worlds. One where they can only be punished, where the fruits of their labor will be privatized and, you know, they'll get laid off if something doesn't go well. The sorts of mercenary decision-making we've seen from a lot of these companies. But if we're trying to stay grounded and stay with the perspective that most people are the hero of their own story, that are, at least through their own narrative, actually trying, well, we can think about a statement from Totoki to investors. studios. The one basically of Bungie devs always having had talent and always wanting to deliver for players. He could see that. And a lot of the sort of veiled or not so veiled threats from PlayStation, they were always about management. And when you look at some of the other big games, yeah, Sony does seem to have a better handle on what a quality video game is, for all their faults, than, say, Microsoft does. It seems the failure of Concord truly shocked PlayStation into waking up, honestly, and that seems to be what has made them completely okay with delaying Marathon, which I'm sure the older PlayStation wouldn't have wanted to do. Certainly the PlayStation that looked at Concord and thought, absolutely, we'll yeet that one out. I'm sure it'll go well. We're PlayStation. Look how photoreal these characters are. The gamers and the people will love it. So in the good timeline, we got a PlayStation that holds leadership accountable, that stops Bungie leadership hiding behind their company's somewhat greater than average independence within the PlayStation roster of studios. If that accountability is there and the incentives are aligned, then maybe there is hope. Maybe Bungie can catch their breath. Maybe even they can take the time to rebuild. Doing that will be hard. And the likes of Destiny is a live game with a profoundly disappointed player base, one whose cynicism does feel rational and does not feel jaded, because they've genuinely had a very goddamn bizarre time. This story's basically been game development where so much of everything goes wrong. But if you want to see the literal opposite of that, a game free from so many of the things that just, be it indie, AA, or AAA, just kill projects, watch this video next. It's about Team Cherry, and I think you'll really like it.
Silk Song! Yeah, good video breaking it down. I think that the truth of the matter is that Bungie has been mismanaged for a very long time. And PlayStation was also mismanaged for, in my opinion, about we'll give it 4 years, through Jim Ryan's tenure. And when you have two terrible managers in charge, you're going to end up with, and those two managers are working together, you're going to end up with a lot of messy decisions and a lot of bad decisions and a lot of mistakes. And that seems to have been what happened here, where on the one hand, like, you can say who's responsible for the overpayment of Bungie from PlayStation. And it's kind of both. Like, the CEO of Bungie should not overpromise knowing that they can't deliver that to get a higher payout price. There's even the potential that could lead to legal ramifications if there's a paper trail, but like, they shouldn't overpromise what they can do. And on Sony's part, they shouldn't be willing to just throw $3.7 billion at one company that makes, as of right now, one game, with the promise that in the future they might have other games that are going to be big. And we super duper triple dog promise that it's going to be the next big thing. Like, across the board, everybody was making mistakes all the way through it. And now they're dealing with all the consequences of it. I think most likely the outcome is going to be that probably Marathon launches and is just kind of like, bloop. I think it'll come out. There will be some players who are interested in it. I don't think it's going to pop off. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't expect it to like blow up and have 200,000 concurrents or anything. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near a Destiny 2 level success. I think believing that it was ever going to be like that was kind of delusional. But I think that that will happen. It probably doesn't beat out Arc Raiders, and after that, they're going to continue seeing Destiny 2 kind of falling lower and lower and lower, and they'll just continue to put more and more resources into Marathon. And I think Marathon maybe climbs the ladder as time goes by after more expansions, more maps, and they build it out some more. It maybe has a longer tail and can start to recover on the back end a little bit more. But they are in a tough spot. There's no doubt about it. The saving grace is that there are phenomenally talented people at Bungie who really know what they're doing. And the hope is that they can just get leadership and they can get direction that takes advantage of that talent. That's the hope. That's the hope. We'll see soon enough. Because there's rumors that we might even be hearing something about Marathon in the next month and a half or so. Maybe around November is the expectation, but we'll see. Best case scenario, they end up like the extraction shooter made by Control devs. Oh, FBC Firebreak or whatever. I think it'll be bigger than that. I mean, FBC Firebreak just kind of disappeared. I think it'll be bigger than that because it does have a lot of name recognition. There's a lot of curiosity with it too. But I as for like, does it pop off? Does it become like Tarkov and it has its own massive community? That I genuinely don't know, but I wouldn't expect it. Like, I would not be betting my own money on it, much less spending $3.7 billion on it,